She was only 6 years old when everything changed. That day, clutching her worn-out backpack, she felt her tiny heart break for the very first time. She watched as her mother walked away slowly, without looking back, leaving her there, alone and lost. But what no one could have imagined is that years later, this little girl would become the only hope for the very woman who once abandoned her. Before we dive into this powerful story, make sure to subscribe to the channel, because today you'll discover the true meaning of forgiveness. Her name was Emily. Ever since that cloudy morning when she watched her mother walk away without looking back, something inside her simply stopped existing. She was only 6, but that moment carved an invisible scar in her soul. She didn't cry right away. She stayed silent, gripping the strap of her worn-out backpack tighter, staring into nothing, hoping it was all just a mistake. But it wasn't. That day, Emily's world split in two. Before the abandonment, and everything that came after, it was her grandmother who took her in, a humble woman with rough hands and a heart too big for her tiny home. She did everything she could: warm meals, soft hugs, a little bit of peace. But some wounds, not even the purest love can heal. Emily grew up with a question echoing through her soul. Why did she leave me? She was sweet, but her eyes always carried a quiet sorrow, even when she smiled. She wasn't the kind of child who threw tantrums or begged for attention. Quite the opposite. Emily tried to be invisible, as if, deep down, she believed that if she were really good, someone might come back for her. At school, she avoided talking about family. While other kids drew colorful houses with moms, dads, and siblings, Emily sketched trees, stars, places that didn't exist, imaginary worlds where no one ever left. Then came adolescence, bringing more silence than answers. While the other girls discovered love and dreams, Emily buried herself in books with a kind of painful determination. She knew she couldn't count on anyone. If she wanted a future, she'd have to build it with her own hands, and that's exactly what she did. At 17, she earned the highest score on the entrance exam to a public university. A victory. Her grandmother celebrated with tears in her eyes, never doubting the strength of that little girl. Emily moved to a small town, carrying very little money, a rented room in the back of someone's house, and an old suitcase that held all her clothes and all her wounds. She worked part-time in a coffee shop, and at night she drowned herself in studies. It was an exhausting routine, but she carried a quiet fire inside to prove she wasn't disposable, that she mattered. Even tired, she never missed a class. Even hurt, she never lost her kindness. Emily had turned her pain into purpose. She often woke up before sunrise to study, and in rare moments of rest, she wrote in an old notebook hidden in her drawer. In it, she poured out thoughts, memories, and letters she would never send. Some were addressed to her mother, others to herself, words of strength, of healing, of forgiveness, even when she wasn't sure she could truly forgive. Emily was the kind of person the world tries to break, but somehow she held on, not out of pride, but because she learned far too young that no one was coming to save her. So she became her own savior, and without knowing it, she was about to face the most painful and the most life-changing reunion of her life. Emily was 24 when the phone rang. A number she didn't recognize flashed on the screen. She almost didn't answer. But something, a feeling she couldn't explain, made her pick up. The voice on the other end wasn't familiar, but the message was clear. Her mother was in the hospital, alone, in critical condition. For a moment, Emily thought it was a mistake, a cruel prank, a glitch in fate, but it wasn't. It was real. After 18 years, the woman who once walked away was back, and now she needed her. The news struck like lightning. In that moment, every year of abandonment, every night, She cried in silence. Every unanswered prayer came rushing back like an avalanche. She hung up the phone and sat motionless for a long time. She didn't know what to feel. Was it anger, fear, guilt, or everything all at once? Forgiveness wasn't even an option. She didn't want to think, she just wanted to forget. For days, Emily tried to ignore it. She went to work, attended classes, pretended life was normal, but inside, she was torn. How could someone who walked away so easily now be asking for help? Why? Emily didn't know what hurt more, that her mother had returned, or that part of her still wanted to see her. Childhood memories began to surface in flashes. The suitcase on the sidewalk, her arms wrapped tightly around her backpack, the smell of her grandmother's coat, and the silence. Always the silence. Until one night, Emily did something unexpected. She took a bus to the hospital. She didn't know what she'd say, or if she'd even go inside, but she had to see for herself. At the front desk, it took her a moment to even say her mother's full name. Her throat tightened, like speaking the words would summon a ghost. The room was quiet, dimly lit. A soft beeping broke the silence, and there, lying on a white hospital bed, was the woman who had once left her behind. For the first time since she was 6 years old, Emily saw her mother's face, aged, exhausted, fragile. But the relief she expected never came, only pain, because it wasn't fair. It wasn't fair to show up now after everything had been broken for so long. Emily didn't enter the room that day. She just stood there, watching through the crack in the door, and walked away. But something had changed. The past started coming back in waves. She remembered small gestures, a messy braid before school, a rushed snack packed in a paper bag, a kiss, maybe forgotten, on the forehead. Were these real memories, or just wishes shaped by longing? She couldn't tell. All she knew was, not everything inside her was resentment. There was something else. Compassion. So Emily began to visit quietly, unannounced. She never gave her name. She simply entered, sat by the bed, and stayed. In silence, she watched the fragile body, the thin hands, the fading strands of hair, and strangely felt that part of her pain was also aging, like time had returned, offering one final chance to make things right. She found out her mother had terminal cancer. She had no one else, lived alone in a small apartment, collapsed in the street before someone called for help. For weeks, Emily cared for her. Without revealing who she was, she adjusted pillows, helped with meals, brought flowers in the afternoon. The doctor thought she was a volunteer from the ward, and in a way, she was, but she was also a daughter, a wounded daughter, a survivor, choosing to be what she never received. Presence. One afternoon, her mother opened her eyes and whispered, "You remind me of someone I used to know." Emily smiled softly. She said nothing. There was no need for words. Everything that needed to be said was already being done. In that silent exchange of glances, two lives marked by absence met for the last time, not through apologies, not through explanations, but through an invisible reconciliation. Her mother passed away days later. Emily was there, the only one at the funeral. She handled the paperwork, cleared out the small apartment. Inside a dusty box, she found old photos, scattered notes, expired pills, and a letter. It had no name, no date, no addressee, but in the middle of the messy handwriting, there was one line she would never forget. "If she ever forgives me, maybe I'll be able to forgive myself too." Tears streamed down Emily's face, uncontrolled, unfiltered. For the first time, she understood. The abandonment she endured was also an escape. Maybe her mother didn't know how to love. Maybe she was afraid. Maybe she was too broken to be anyone's mother. But there, in the stillness of an empty room, Emily made a decision. She would not live with hatred. She would not repeat the silence. She would not pass down the weight of bitterness to another generation. She would turn pain into something else, not to forget, but to heal. After the funeral, Emily returned home carrying a different kind of silence. It wasn't the silence of abandonment anymore. It was the silence of closure, of farewell, of acceptance. But it was also the beginning of something new, a quiet urge to rebuild, to transform, to break the cycle. In the days that followed, as she sorted through the few belongings her mother left behind, Emily found more than photos and old objects. She found traces of a woman no one ever really knew, fragments of a life never fully told. There were handwritten recipes, letters never sent, old books filled with scribbles in the margins, and tucked between the worn pages of an old notebook. She found something that changed everything, a school report card, old, with her name on it. Emily froze. She couldn't believe it. Her mother had kept this. On the last page, taped with yellowing adhesive, was a drawing, a messy, childlike sketch Emily remembered from kindergarten. A drawing she thought had been thrown away. Next to it, written in trembling letters, was a single sentence. "She is my reason." Emily held the paper for a long time, and in that simple, quiet discovery, something inside her finally gave way. For years, she believed she had never been loved, that she had been forgotten, erased, thrown away. But maybe, just maybe, she had been loved by someone who didn't know how to show it. That possibility, no matter how painful, was enough to unlock something deep inside her. Emily never went back to who she was before, and she didn't try to. She chose to live differently. Not just survive, she returned to college, finished her degree, and launched a community outreach project focused on emotional support for abandoned youth. She wanted to give others what she never had: presence, a safe space to breathe, to belong, to heal. She called the space Roots, just a small room on campus, homemade posters, a second-hand couch. No one believed much in it at first, but Emily did, because she knew body and soul what abandonment felt like. She knew how it hollowed you out, and how even the smallest act of kindness could fill you again. Little by little, the project grew. Donations came in, partners joined, volunteers followed, but more importantly, the stories came. Boys sleeping in shelters, girls kicked out of their homes, young people who just needed to hear, "You matter." Emily listened to them all with patience, with compassion, without judgment, because she knew everyone carried invisible pain. And sometimes, being heard is already a form of healing. The real turning point came 3 years later. Roots was selected for a National Social Impact Award. It was a major recognition. But for Emily, more than an award, it was a personal milestone. On the night of the ceremony, she stepped onto the stage with trembling hands. A full auditorium, bright lights, cameras, applause. But in her heart, only one question echoed. If my mother was still alive, would she be proud of me? She didn't know. And maybe she never would. But on that stage, Emily did something no one expected. She didn't talk about the project. She didn't share statistics. She didn't thank the sponsors. She told her story. With a steady voice and an open heart, she spoke about her childhood, the backpack on the sidewalk, the silence, the anger, the reunion, the forgiveness, and she ended with this: "What saved me was choosing not to repeat the abandonment I was left behind, but today I choose to stay, for myself, for her, and for everyone who just needs someone who won't walk away." The room fell into complete silence. Then, an eruption of applause. Unlike anything she'd ever heard, that day, Emily understood something profound. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting. or justifying what was done. It's about freeing yourself from the pain someone else caused. It's about ending the cycle, about deciding that your story won't end the way it began. And that's exactly what she did. Today, years later, Roots has become a registered non-profit. It serves hundreds of young people every year. Many of them find for the first time an emotional home. Emily still leads the organization, calm, steady, but now with a different light in her eyes, the light of someone who has made peace with her past and who has chosen to live with purpose. Sometimes when she closes her eyes, she still sees the little girl on the sidewalk, backpack on her shoulders, heart in pieces. But now, when she imagines that scene, she sees herself walk toward the child, kneel beside her and say, not with words, but with her eyes, "It's going to be okay, I promise." And she keeps that promise every single day. Emily always thought pain would define her. For a long time, she believed she had been marked by an abandonment too deep to overcome, that she would grow up with a hole in her chest, that love was something meant for others, but not for her. But she was wrong. Pain didn't define her. The choice she made in the face of pain, that's what shaped who she became. She could have turned away. She could have been cold, indifferent, even vengeful, and no one would have blamed her. It would have made sense. But Emily chose to stay. She chose to go back to that hospital, to sit beside the woman who once left her behind, to be present for someone who had been absent. And that was her silent victory, because forgiveness isn't about the other person. It's about not letting the pain keep running your life. Emily moved forward, but not without scars. The abandonment left marks. The pain shaped her, but it was forgiveness that gave her story meaning. Years later, on an ordinary morning, she was walking down the hallway of the non-profit when one of the project's psychologists called out to her. There was a new girl, 13, quiet, didn't speak much. They said she'd been left by her mother at the bus station just days ago. Her name was Grace. Emily felt a chill run through her entire body. Grace, a simple name, but on that morning, it felt like fate. She walked into the room. The girl was sitting cross-legged, hugging a worn-out backpack, just like Emily once did. Her eyes held the same emptiness Emily had carried for years. Emily walked over slowly, sat down beside her, said nothing. She let the silence be, once again, a space for something new to begin. And then, the girl rested her head gently on Emily's shoulder. No words were spoken, but in that moment, the cycle finally broke. Emily had become exactly what she once needed as a child. Someone who doesn't walk away. She didn't have the mother she dreamed of. But she became the woman she always wished she had found. And that was more than enough. Because in the end, Emily's greatest strength wasn't resilience. It was compassion. The ability to turn her pain into shelter, her story into a bridge, her past into healing for others. She understood that forgiveness doesn't change what happened, but it changes what you do with what happened. Emily chose not to be the victim, not the villain. She chose to be the quiet miracle in someone else's life, and that's why, still today, her name echoes in the hearts of those who've been touched by her hands, her eyes, her embrace. She was abandoned, but she chose to stay, and because of that, everything changed. Emily's story is a powerful reminder that our pain doesn't have to define our future. She could have walked the same path that once broke her. She could have closed her heart, let her wounds harden into hate, but she chose a path infinitely harder and infinitely more transformative. The path of forgiveness. And that choice didn't just heal her story, it healed others, it healed futures. How many people walk through life carrying invisible burdens? How many are silently hoping that someone will just stay, that someone won't walk away? Emily chose to be that someone. And because of that, her story lives on, multiplied, reflected in every young person who now finds hope where there was once only abandonment. If this story touched your heart, share it. Leave a comment below and tell us what moved you the most. And if you've ever had to forgive someone or been forgiven, share your story. You never know who it might inspire. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Because here, every story is an invitation to feel, to reflect, and maybe to transform. Now, if Emily's journey moved you, wait until you see what happened when a manager humiliated a poor worker. And the CEO heard everything. Watch it now. The manager mocked her poverty. Then the CEO heard everything. See you in the next video.